Folks, it is the most wonderful time of the year. Canadian Thanksgiving, but after that is Halloween, so I thought to, celebrate the season. I'll give you a rundown of some spooky books I've read in the past that I really enjoyed, ones that I think really fit the Halloween vibe, and if you're looking for something spooky to read, none of these are particularly long and I think would be a great way to pass the time. And then near the end of the month, I'll make a similar video, but I'll be recapping all of the new spooky books that I've read in October. First up today is The Troop by Nick Cutter, one I finished pretty recently, but I didn't post a review for it yet because I wanted to save it for this video. So this book follows a Boy Scout troop and their scout leader in Prince Edward Island as they go on a camping trip in the woods, and they are, let's say, found by something, and what it proceeds to do to them is kind of unspeakable. I think this is a very good book to go into completely blind. It is very creepy, very disturbing. Not for everyone, though. The body horror is on another level. I am someone who is, very desensitized to a lot of the horror genre, but there were parts in this book that genuinely made me feel sick, so, yeah, fair warning there. But if you can stomach it, this book does have a very interesting story, with characters that have a little bit more to them than you initially expect. I also feel like I could personally relate to this book, probably more than some people, because not only am I also from Atlantic Canada, but I was also a Boy Scout. So I would participate in the exact same activities that go on in this book. The outcome of those camping trips was not quite the same, but yeah, it was fun to read about. Next is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the story about a group of friends who go on a hunting trip one day, and they make a mistake, they do something they shouldn't have, and now all these years later, something has come back and wants revenge. This is an extremely chilling book. The atmosphere in this one is crazy. A ton of horrifying imagery, ton of suspense, and a very unique, we'll say, antagonist. I think Stephen Graham Jones's writing style can be a bit hard to get into, especially if this is your first book from him, but it's definitely worth getting used to, because this is a banger. I don't think his Indian Lake trilogy really fits the Halloween vibe, but those are also fantastic books, and the final one comes out in March. I'm very excited. Obviously, we can't do this without mentioning some Stephen King books, and, there are a lot of them that could apply here, but because I want to have more than one author here, I've only picked a couple. The first is The Mist, which is part of the Skeleton Crew collection, but it was also released on its own. It's a very famous story. It was made into a very famous movie about this mysterious mist that descends upon a town while our main character is out grocery shopping, and all the people in the store are quick to realize that something is in the mist and they are trapped. Really tense claustrophobic thriller that really explores the limits that normal people can be pushed to in dire situations. And of course, Pet Sematary. I mean, I'm not alone in saying this is probably King's scariest book. Everything about it is just so morbid and disturbing, but also fascinating. This is one of his most famous books, and for very good reason. Don't watch that new movie they have out, whatever that is. I don't even know what they're doing here. Read the book instead. It's delightful. Yeah, delightful, okay. A book I got through earlier in the year, I don't actually have a physical copy of it because they gave it away on Audible, but that was The Lesser Dead by Christopher Buehlman, a story that follows vampires in the sewers under New York City. They're kind of chill, living out their vampire lives, not really bothering anyone, except when they need to feed. But things start to change when, we'll say, some new vampires come to the sewer. They seem innocent at first, but it is quickly revealed that they may have sinister motives. Ever since I finished this book, it has stuck with me. And the more I think about it, the better I think it ends up being in retrospect. This is a book dripping with atmosphere and character. Our main narrator is so fully realized, it's excellent, but he's also unreliable, and the way the story plays out was very engaging, and it was also just full of classic vampire stuff that I thought was extremely well done here. So yeah, if you are a fan of good vampire stories, I honestly think this is a must-read, and it's definitely one of my favorite horror books in recent memory. Now, all these books have been kind of disturbing and bleak as hell, so let's have some fun for a bit. Here's Fear Street by Mr. Robert Stein, of course, most famous for writing the Goosebumps series, but back in the 90s, he also put out this baby, Fear Street, which, similar to Goosebumps, were very short books that he made an absurd amount of. It was like over 50 or something, but for a bit of an older audience. So most of these books are following teenagers, and they're dealing with more realistic horrors, you know, cults, killers, that type of stuff. And I think they are quite fun. Now, I can only speak for the first 4. I'm not insane. I haven't read every Fear Street novel, which they put together in a nice little collection here. And none of them are amazing, but they're nice little stories to get you into a spooky mood. One thing I do really like about Fear Street, though, is how all of these books take place in the one setting. We're following different characters in each book, but there is continuity. All of the characters that we have followed before are still here and often appear in other stories. I think it fleshes out this world a lot more and makes it really fun to come back to. So yeah, I'd give these a try if you're in the mood, and if you like them, there's way more where that comes from. I'm also a pretty big fan of the film trilogy they did. And then we have Soul Eater. This is a manga series by Atsushi Okubo. It's about 25 volumes long, and about these students who go to Death Academy to train to become essentially Grim Reapers. A bunch of them can turn into weapons, and they go and they hunt witches. And there's this big overarching story with all these ancient demons coming back. It's pretty wild. It's pretty insane. It is a battle manga, but I also think it is a love letter to Halloween and to the horror genre. Everything about it just oozes spooky creativity. It's got fun characters, a fun story, excellent art, especially later on. Like, if you're a fan of horror stuff and battle manga, I do think this is one of the essentials. Fair warning, does have a lot of sexual fan service, like at the very start of the series. It goes way too overboard, and I can definitely see it being a turnoff for people, but that is very front-loaded, and after like a volume or two, that stuff like is very minimal. So yeah, just a fair warning. I don't want you to start this thinking I'm a pervert. There's an anime adaptation too, which was really good until it stopped following the manga. You can look up whatever episode that was. Once they did their own thing, it became probably the worst thing I've ever seen in my life, but you can just ignore it. It's great. All right, back to the creepy stuff. I have not read a ton of H.P. Lovecraft. I really got to be in a specific mood to read his stuff, and it's not a mood that comes upon me very often. But a couple Halloweens ago, I checked out The Color Out of Space, and I gotta say, this was a banger. It's a pretty brief short story. I took it out in a single night. But it was this really terrifying concept about this color that was a completely unique color, something no one had ever seen before. It descends upon this small area and just starts changing things. And that's all I will say, but God. There's a reason Lovecraft has become such a phenomenon. He was very good at writing horror. I'd also recommend probably his most famous work, The Call of Cthulhu. He's great at just making you feel small and meaningless and fills you with dread. It's great. It's wonderful. Last book I'm going to mention is one I reviewed over the summer here, and that's Dracula. It's just a great classic story. You get to see where a lot of the vampire tropes come from. But in particular, I think the first couple of chapters where Jonathan Harker is at Dracula's castle, I think are excellent. Some of the best horror I have ever read. You can really just read that as sort of like a standalone short story, and it's amazing. But the rest of the book is great too, so, you know, just read the full thing. It's great. So yeah, if you were looking for some stuff to read during Halloween, hopefully one of those will suit your fancy. I know a lot of these were really popular, so there's a good chance a lot of people have read some of them, but hopefully there's at least one you haven't. I will now be retreating into my cave to go read more, because I have a lot to read. While I am keeping a lot of my horror reads for the month a secret here, check out my Goodreads. Like, I update stuff in real time, so just a hint. Also, you can check out my webcomic. It's also horror. 10 chapters are out, more to come. And with that, thank you all so much for watching. You can let me know your thoughts on some of these books. What are some books that you're planning to read in October? And I'll see you all next time for something. We'll do something next. I don't know.